Hello, and welcome to Anime Audio Commentary. Today I'll be commenting over episode 17 of Neon Genesis Evangelion. If you'd like to watch along, then start watching now. So, at the outset of this episode, it seems like Misato is at odds with her superiors. She, as she is wont to do, is, trying to respect Shinju's feelings about all this, and she's preventing him from being questioned by the higher-ups. So additionally, the higher-ups seem to be doubting what Shinji had reported, and Misato's really going to bat for him here. Shinji probably doesn't appreciate that, likely in large part because he doesn't know about it, but it speaks to Misato's character, I guess, that even when Shinji's not around, she's going to bat for him. So interestingly, one of the guys says something interesting, and then when Misato asks questions, they declare that we won't be taking any questions. So Gendo and the other council members come to the conclusion that there really isn't much time. The angels are becoming smarter progressively. So now we cut to Toji. There's some people in the background who are talking about him and his sister and how he's visiting her and all that. I guess they're probably nurses or doctors. So we also get a little snippet of conversation between Rei and Gendo. And it's really clear that the way he treats her is much better than he treats Shinji. It's almost criminal. So interestingly, Toji has been drafted to deliver something to Rei after school. And in my mind, I'm drawing parallels between that and what Shinji had to do. So in other news, something has really hit the fan elsewhere. it would seem as though that something in Nevada was there 1 minute and then gone the next. Given that this is Nerve we're talking about here, it's obviously something kind of shady, some sort of military base. It was bad enough that it disrupted a geosynchronous satellite feed. So not only was the compound itself gone, like all the people are gone too. So all the usual suspects from the command room are sort of sharing information. It seems like there was an Evangelion of sorts over there, and they were trying to install an S2 engine in it, and that might have been the impetus for whatever happened. So notably, Misato is somewhat salty about this, declaring that they at Nerve are being forced to use things they don't understand. So it sounds like there's a significant amount of tension between Japan and the US here. So Japan, or rather the US, had initially fought for the rights to build Units 3 and 4, and I guess one of them went up in flames, so they're foisting the other one onto Nerve in Japan. Ritsuko and Gendo are also talking about a dummy plug of sorts. It's essentially like a fake plug that'll trick the EVA into thinking it has a pilot. And I guess the one they were looking at was modeled off of Rei. So speaking of Rei, we're back in that sort of creepy room where she's just chilling out naked in a tube. And there's a whole bunch of pipe work above her that, at least to me, resembles a human brain. That might not mean anything in and of itself, but I think it's neat. Notably, Ritsuko is also there with Gendo, chilling out in this creepy room. So, whatever weird stuff is going on, the three of them are all in on it. So there's lots of trouble at school. Toji is very excited for lunch and he has all kinds of food. But unfortunately, Shinji didn't have time to cook, so now he and Asuka go hungry. It strikes me as pretty darn unfair of her to go off on Shinji like that. You know, she could have made her own lunch. Meanwhile, between Ritsuko and Misato, they've discovered the fourth child, but this is also a source of friction between them because Misato has not gotten a report like I suppose she normally would. So the identity of the fourth child is very surprising to Misato. So it seems to Misato that the identity of the fourth child might cause Shinji undue stress. Of course, Ritsuko's not exactly being very open about this entire thing. So it seems like the class rep here was sort of hinting a little bit, and Toji completely missed the cue. He's got to go visit Ray and hand out something. He doesn't want to go to a girl's place by himself. Class rep is going to go with him, but Toji just totally ignored her and asked Shinji instead. It's very clear that the class rep wanted to go with him, but it can't be helped, I guess. So just like before when Shinji went to deliver the new ID badge, Shinji started doing a little breaking and entering here, because the mail slot's jammed full, doors unlocked. Like before, Ray's room is simultaneously barren and a mess. Unlike before, there's no sign of Ray so far. So I guess Shinji sort of learned his lesson, and he just leaves the papers on her bed. Oh, I take that back. He hasn't learned his lesson. He's poking around now, but this time he's doing a little cleaning up. Shinji, cunningly enough, sort of tries to goad Toji into helping clean as well by using Misato as a bargaining chip. So interestingly, Toji sort of opens a line of inquiry with Shinji. And he's saying initially he thought Shinji was a giant jerk, but it turns out Shinji wasn't a jerk, he was just super shy. And so he just sort of seemed like that. So now Ray shows up, and notably, she's somewhat embarrassed by Shinji having done some cleaning. I think that instance is one of the most emotion we've seen her show. She really doesn't tend to emote much more beyond what we saw there. Ray also considers that she never really uses words of gratitude like thank you, not even with Gendo. Ray really is very inhuman and creepy. There's no two ways about it. So now we have Gendo and Fuyutsuki talking, and they're sort of musing on the city of Tokyo 3 and how it's essentially like a paradise built to distract the human psyche from its fear of death. Not sure if I agree with that, but I guess I can sort of see it. Like, of course, if you follow that line of thinking, really anything a human being does is a distraction from the fear of death. After all, isn't death the ultimate thing to be afraid of? The inevitable end to all? So, Gendo and Fuyutsuki are sort of, maybe not disagreeing, but they're sort of talking about the council and what's going on there. It seems that the council's got their panties in a twist, and Gendo doesn't really care about it. He seems to think that the facilities they currently have at Nerve and Unit 1 should be sufficient for whatever they need. So Kaji's up to his usual business of flirting with women, presumably fishing for information of some sort, before getting caught by Misato. So interestingly, Kaji started playing stupid here, and Misato is onto it. So Kaji drops a bit of a bombshell here. Misato was sort of investigating the Marduk Institute, but according to Kaji, it doesn't exist at all. It in and of itself is a shell company run by Nerve. So Misato seems to put two and two together to state that Gendo is behind everything. So now Shinji and Kaji are talking. Kaji's letting him in on his little secret hobby here of growing watermelons. He has something of a green thumb. So Kaji's starting to get a little philosophical here about life and pleasure and pain and all that. So their conversation is ultimately cut off by the necessity of another sync test. So unfortunately, Shinji's not doing too well on this test, which puts additional weight on Misato, who's still reluctant to tell him about the fourth child. So the next day at school, first thing in the morning, Toji's called down to the principal's office. And seemingly, he didn't do anything wrong, which makes this interesting. So we're not shown precisely why Toji was called into the office. But given, the focus on Toji and all this talk about the fourth child, I think we can safely assume that he is the fourth child. So Shinji's now talking to Kensuke, and Kensuke seemingly has some sort of insider information on new Evangelion stuff. So Shinji really doesn't know anything between the imminent test of Unit 3 and the total and absolute loss of Unit 4. So Kensuke, it almost seems like he's spilled the beans a little too much. So notably, Toji's still missing. Oh, I take that back. He just returned. But both Shinji and the class rep were, sort of keeping an eye out for him. So whatever happened in the principal's office, Toji certainly seems kind of bummed about it. I'd imagine that makes sense because I wouldn't particularly want to be an EVA pilot either, so I don't imagine he's taking it too well. So after the school day, Toji and the class rep have a bit of a conversation. Toji's talking about how he always buys his lunch. And the class rep is sort of dancing around the issue. But since she already cooks for her sisters, she might as well cook for him as well. It wouldn't be any extra effort. So it's a nice little roundabout way of sort of hinting that she has a crush on him. So now we cut to Kaji and Asuka. Kaji's doing something on a computer, but Asuka is quickly nosing in on what he's doing. So even though Kaji tells her to go away, she noses in and she sees something she really doesn't like, which in this case is the identity of the fourth child. So I guess given that we know she doesn't really like Toji that much, I guess it's really all but confirmed at this point. Especially with this, sort of melancholy scene of Toji. Alright, well that's it for this episode. If you've enjoyed it, then by all means tune in for the next one.